Hello, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and remotely we have Alex here joining
Hey,
us from Los Angeles. Alex, thank you for joining us today.
of course. Sorry if I'm a little bit slow and lagging with the video quality here, but I'm going to try my best, and it's great to be on the show.
That's okay. You're working with the Thunk pad, as we affectionately know it, which is
Yeah,
a really old, very thick Think pad that Alex has been stuck with ever since he broke his last laptop. So we appreciate you joining us today, even if it might be on a piece of hardware from the early 2000s.
yep. This one's next
And
in line for ThinkPads that I've broken. I have a whole collection now.
oh boy. And also just want to shout out everybody who has very patiently waited in our chat today as we've gotten set up. Thank you to Zam and 8-Bit Oni and everybody else there. Good to see you again. So Alex and I have not done the stream for a week because we have been at the Hope Conference in New York. So that was a first-time experience for both Alex and I because I have never been to Hope before, even though I have presented virtually during the pandemic, and Alex has never presented at all. So if anybody ran into us at the Hope Conference, then hello. It was really great getting to meet some new hackers and being able to check out New York for me the second time ever and for Alex the first time ever. So Alex, how was it? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, it was quite startling because I didn't expect New York to be like all the stereotypes that you see in movies and that kind of thing. It was quite loud, aggressive of a city, but it was pretty cool. The conference was low key. I met some cool hackers there. Made some new friends and got to screw around with hardware, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so speaking of new friends, we got this really awesome badge. Do you want to
Ooh,
explain
yeah.
who is behind this really cool and interesting thing?
Yeah, so our friend Andrew, who runs the channel Make It Hackin' on YouTube and TikTok, gave us this spider badge. So essentially, he did a presentation on different ways that hardware security tags, like tags that you see on clothing articles and that thing in stores, essentially as like a security feature to prevent it from being like shoplifted. He demonstrated different ways that these are implemented and can also be defeated. So he gave us this pretty cool spider badge. Mine actually is out of battery, but I'm pretty sure I heard yours working, Kody.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
basically,
so
this
here
is
we
just
go.
yeah. If you want to show that off.
All right, so now it's going off, and if I want to disable it, there's a little magnetic sensor on it right here, and my MacBook has a magnet on the bottom for some reason. So, oh, I have to close the circuit again, but if you broke the circuit before, that's not going to do anything, so then I have to touch it on the bottom. Hope you're enjoying the audio here.
Woo!
There we go, and it
Hey,
resets the badge. Andrew,
yeah.
aka Make It Hackin', would hopefully be proud that I was paying attention to the demo and I know how to reset it. So apparently he made a bunch of these, and the USB cable for it ended up not working. So he had this backup alligator clip idea just in case something didn't work. And of course, something didn't work. So I was really impressed with his design philosophy, where he just assumed that something would be broken. And because he made that assumption, he was still able to use these boards, even though he didn't manage to get in a proper shipment of the correct USB cable. So I was impressed by the recovery on that. It was really cool.
Yeah, if you switch over to my screen, you can actually see his presentation from the Hope Conference got featured on Motherboard and here also Vice. So it's pretty cool. I actually got to attend this particular presentation, and towards the end, he did a live demonstration on various types of security tags. I think he showed off like one of these ink ones where the defeating mechanism was essentially he like tied a rubber band around like the pin, and it was able to like contract and allow it to separate without like exploding. Some of the other ones he was able to defeat by using like chip bags, like ruffle bags, as an insulation mechanism, like a Faraday cage, to prevent like the detection system from going off. And there were some other pretty novel methods. One of them, which he did not showcase, was using a, I believe, non-lubricated condom and a screwdriver. So clearly he's tried out all sorts of crazy things, but it was really cool to see this demonstration live, and also all the different types of security tags that he got to screw around with. This one in particular, though, is meant to emulate a particular type of tag called a spider tag. I think there's a picture somewhere in here, but essentially those are the types of security mechanisms where it's like a little electronic beeper and like a wire that encloses like an electronics box. I see these a lot at like Best Buy or that kind of thing, where if you like snip the wire in order to like remove the product, this thing just goes like ham and starts like beeping.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially the way that he showcased live on the stage was you could just strip So basically the way that works is it uses continuity to detect like if you snip the wire. So the demo was pretty cool. He had someone strip two ends of a actual spider tag, clip alligator clips to it, and then cut it and remove it from a box, and ended up working. But this is basically a demonstration of that in the form factor of a conference badge. So I found that really cool.
Yeah, and you forgot almost the best part of this badge. If you power it on, then it has two coils on it, which will automatically trip any store that has one of those, sensors on the way in or out. So if you want to be constantly setting those, if you're a lonely person and you just want to start a conversation, like you're maybe a little shy and you are hoping that someone will come up and talk to you, then I can guarantee you'll get talked to if you grab one of these badges because of the two different coils on it that will trigger a response anytime you go near those doors. So I kind of want to just walk like in a line by them and see how many doors in a row I can trigger, not just walking through, but just walking near and seeing how strong the coils on this are when it's fully charged up. So
I think actually this one doesn't even have to be charged up. I think these ones are completely passive. You can see they're just like zip tied to the board. I believe he literally removed these from like security tags and zip tied these on here. Yeah,
that's even better. Yeah, so you don't even need to power it up. It will just automatically trigger it because it's passive. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah. People who make hardware for conferences are very brave, and the fact that a bunch of things kind of went wrong in this case, but the badge still worked. It was great for the demonstration, and we got our hands on it, and we really, really enjoyed getting to learn about this type of security through these demonstrations. It was awesome. It was really cool. And as Alex mentioned, some of these components are literally zip tied to the board, so it didn't really take away from the experience that, like some of these things are maybe not the most polished state. I really thought that it was a cool way of showing this off and educating other people. So that was probably my favorite project of the conference. I really enjoyed that and getting to hang out with Andrew, aka Make It Hacken. So super cool. That was one of my favorite parts of the Hope conference. And of course, watching Alex's presentation as well. So that was really cool. Alex, how did that go?
Oh, that went wonderful. You even helped me make some of the slides.
I sure did. Over on my screen, you can actually see Alex's slides from the presentation in which you can see that he is holding hands with Bigfoot in several slides. And then I provide some disruption here as soon as he announces that he is from the Treasure State. So by wildly applauding, to up Alex's morale in this particular presentation, I think I really contributed a lot. I just want to congratulate Alex on his first ever presentation at a conference. And also, I was amazed that it went so well based on the last time you were actually editing the presentation, which was immediately before.
Oh yeah, 5 minutes presenting. I was still finishing up my slides, but yeah, that was really cool. We also got our first workshop at a conference, which was really cool. The USB attack workshop featuring the one and only USB nugget. That was also pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got some feedback on that. A bunch of people who were in the class said they were having an awesome time and actually tagged us. It was super cool to see that. So thank you to everybody who attended that. We actually ended up giving out loaner USB nuggets to everybody. So whether or not they purchased one, we wanted everybody to learn how to do this and see how easy it was. And lots of people ended up supporting us coming to the conference and doing the class by purchasing a nugget at the end, which was super awesome. So thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to everybody who bought one at the end. It was an awesome experience for me and Alex. And based on this, we are definitely going to continue doing this in the future. As you can see, the class got pretty full. And it took us a good amount of time to get everyone set up and making their own payloads. It was a 3-hour class and we ran up right against the end. So overall, it was a really great experience and I'm glad we got to reach out to so many new people while we were at the Hope Conference. So if you were one of them, then thank you for coming out and saying hello. And it was just awesome to meet everyone.
I'm surprised with how smoothly it went over, honestly. Like, being the first time we did a shop at that scale and also how many different operating systems we were trying to get this to work on.
Yeah, so just for scale, Alex and I were trying to do a workshop where we wanted everybody there with all these different operating systems to be able to plug in our device, put a flash it from being completely unflashed, and then put their own Ducky script payloads on it and run it. And in a 3-hour period, we got all these people to be able to use their browser to be able to do this, which was really awesome and honestly quite challenging. But in the end, I don't think we left anybody behind and we were able to trace down every problem. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so there's also something happened today that I need to address, and this is something that I have known was going to happen for a very long time. So today, the press found out about my cat, and he is going viral. So I want to get out in front of this and address it, before you find out about it in your local news. So I did an interview with David Bombal where I really spilled the beans on a lot of sensitive things. Most importantly, I feel like the original inspiration behind our nugget, which is of course my cat Hand Banana, seen here inspecting the quality of a batch of nuggets. So Hand Banana is really the driving source behind a lot of our inspiration for our product. He's kind of the secret sauce, and we were trying to keep this a trade secret, but I did end up getting very comfortable in the interview, and I let a couple of things slide that I maybe shouldn't have. So if you want to see this and other secrets of our project, then you should definitely check out this interview with David Bombal. I have to say, I really enjoyed the way that he cut it together. It's really, really well done. Of course, I'm in it, so I'm a little biased, but I really like the way that he cut it up and managed to find really great moments of footage of me and Alex's content to kind of punctuate what we're talking about. It's really easy to watch and was actually super fun to do. So I will be on again for sure because I really enjoyed doing this. And the episode just came out today and it's doing super well. It's got a lot of great comments on it. So if you haven't seen it, then it was really fun to do, and hopefully you guys enjoy this sort of content. If you like it, I will definitely come on and do more because I really enjoyed talking to David, and frankly, it just felt like an easy, fun conversation with another hacker. So yeah. So yes, if you have any questions about my cat Hand Banana, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I will try to address the ones I can publicly address, but I urge you in this time of intense publicity to respect privacy.
His private life.
Yes, respect his private life. He's young. He deserves to be able to do what he does without scrutiny. Okay, so just wanted to move on from that firestorm of media attention that's been directed towards my cat in the last 24 hours. Thank you for the attention, but please respect him.
We'll probably need to sign some sort of agreement that he can actually appear on camera.
Yeah, and so finally, if you didn't catch my talk at the Hope Conference, which was $5 cyber weapons and how to use them, I did a deep dive into various microcontrollers and the different projects that are supported on them to give people an overall high-level impression of what you can do for $5. There was a presentation immediately before mine that was like $15 radio, electronic warfare or something, but most of the attacks were actually for like $30 or more. So I feel really good about keeping it pretty honest here and making it so that it was really like if I went 50 cents over, I was apologizing. I also got to use Dolly Mini to generate cyber weapons. And this is when I typed in $5 cyber weapons, this is what it generated for me. So I'm actually really proud of this because this is some sort of feverish nightmare dream of hacker imagery and both cyber and weapons. And I got to use another one, which I know I showed in my last stream too, but I just want to point it out again because it is hilarious. Oh, right, I have to load more pages. I told it to show me what it would look like if a microcontroller was burning, so a tiny computer bursting into flames. Here we go, and this is what it gave me. So I love using Dolly Mini. It's a creepy, weird, it generates CAPTCHA level quality images sometimes, but I've seen some really incredible things done with it. And also, so our friend Brandon recently got access to the full Dolly program, which is much more sophisticated and makes much more high resolution images. So the first thing that he typed into it was $5 cyber weapons, and it almost banned him from the platform. It warned him if he continued to search for things that violated their terms of service, he would no longer be allowed to use it. So pretty funny that on Dolly Mini, you can search for anything. But right now, if you wanted to do that on the full Dolly platform, it's not something that they would allow. So that was pretty funny.
It's specifically against naughty stuff. I think that's somewhere in their terms of use.
Yeah, it was funny. It was very funny. So when I came home also, I found 4 Raspberry Pi Pico Ws. So fresh off of my presentation, I can explain that the Raspberry Pi Pico W is a brand new extension on the Raspberry Pi Pico that adds wireless functionality. So that means you can now use this for a variety of different interesting things. The way that it's done here is kind of unusual because instead of a single microcontroller that's capable of both, it's actually 2 that are kind of connected together. But it still is incredibly useful, and I was able to purchase them at the $6 price point they were advertised at, which I was kind of impressed by. So I immediately got these from Canikit, the day that they were available. And they're so new that there is not CircuitPython for them yet. So I'm not able to use the functionality via CircuitPython, but I hear that there is a MicroPython build for it. So I'm going to be checking them out later and seeing whether or not it's a useful thing to work on using MicroPython, which is a little bit more difficult to use than CircuitPython, but I still really enjoy working with. So we'll see what happens, but I am really impressed that I was able to get one so quickly, and this looks like a lot of people are going to do some very cool things with it, so I'm excited to see what happens. But I am a little disappointed that I can't immediately do some CircuitPython projects. I've checked and it looks like a number of people have volunteered to work on it, but nobody's actually shown any work yet, so I'm not sure exactly when this is going to get CircuitPython functionality, but I am excited to work with it, so it was really cool. As you can see, though, I was called away from admiring them because I had something else I had to do. But yeah, okay, so that's what has been going on with us. Alex, what have you got in the news this week?
I have some stuff pulled up just a second here, but just wanted to ask, do you know if CircuitPython works on the regular Pico?
Yes,
just
it does.
Curious.
Yeah. So
nice.
Dave, who makes the Pico Ducky, is, as far as I know, the first person to make a human interface device attack tool that supports Ducky script that is using CircuitPython on the Pi Pico. So yeah,
cool.
Really cool to see some
really excited to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've already seen some pretty interesting like network-based stuff. A demonstration that I saw on Twitter that was pretty crazy was someone actually hosted like a VNC server on the Pi Pico W that was like streaming remote desktop protocol to a TFT screen that was hooked up to a Pico. So that was pretty crazy to me. Of course, the architecture is like pretty hot and new. It's like, I think like 32-bit RISC-V, like whatever, but it's pretty fast and crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like as soon as some of these existing projects for the Pi Pico are ported over to the Pi Pico W, you're going to see a lot of these previously like offline projects suddenly have like web interfaces or other functionality that wasn't possible before. So that's what I'm really excited for.
Yeah. Cool. So anyways, let's jump right in. So first I'm going to start by featuring some pretty cool tools that I discovered over the course of the past 2 weeks. Kind of briefly. So this first tool here is called Smap, which is essentially just a drop-in replacement for Nmap that I found pretty novel. So basically, this is supposed to be a faster version of Nmap that facilitates doing port scans by using the service Shodan. Shodan is essentially this service that lets you discover open ports on the internet and monitor what's happening over them. Like if somebody leaves open their web camera, or maybe it's some sort of control system or that kind of thing. But basically, this is like a faster version of Nmap that uses Shodan to facilitate these types of searches. And there's some other cool features that are built into this, like vulnerability detection. It's able to scan really quickly for the most common ports. And it also keeps you pretty anonymous since it's using a third-party service in order to do the scan, that service being Shodan, instead of actually doing the port scan from your local machine. So I haven't tried this out yet, but it's supposed to be a direct drop-in for Nmap, so all the same commands will work, the same parameters, that kind of thing. But this looked really cool.
That does look really cool. I've also been looking for alternatives or anything that's easier to script or play with, just because I feel like I've explored Nmap kind of all the way at some points.
Yeah. Over here we have a wireless intrusion detection system suite. I actually didn't get to look too much into this, but when I was doing research on ways that you could detect Wi-Fi attacks in like an automated sense, initially I made a video on ways that you could detect a particular type of attack called a karma attack. So that one featured basically just using a combination of different tools. It was using the AirCrack suite in order to gather wireless reconnaissance, and then also Python in order to detect the presence of malicious actors that are using things like Wi-Fi pineapples or that kind of thing in order to create rogue access points that automatically get victims to join and hand over information. So I found this wireless intrusion detection system while searching for ways that you could detect other types of Wi-Fi attacks. So this suite looks pretty interesting. I haven't tried out any of the tools quite yet, but here you can see it's able to detect a variety of different types of Wi-Fi attacks. You can detect beacon floods, you can detect deauthentication, you can detect attacks that take advantage of fragmentation, and a bunch of other different attacks here.
Interesting. So maybe that might, if anybody in the audience is interested, let us know. Maybe we could do a video on Hack5 covering how some of the most common Wi-Fi attacks can be detected by something like this.
Yeah, I also found this interesting because I didn't know about wireless intrusion detection systems or like suites before this. Because obviously there's like tools that exist out there like Snort or that kind of thing that are like IDS systems for typical like networks or like Soho setups or like that kind of thing. But I didn't know that there's actually like a whole dedicated thing specifically tailored towards wireless attacks. That's also usually not something that I see set up as like a defense mechanism. Like that's not something a lot of people consider, like Wi-Fi attacks being, I guess, like a common attack surface. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's somebody in the chat who is upset that we haven't updated Nullbyte for 2 years. I just want to, again, point out, as we do in almost all of our streams, that we moved over to Hack 5 definitely over a year ago. So if you're looking for our new practical content, then you can check it out on Hack 5, because that's where we put our new tutorials, because we actually don't own Nullbyte. That's not mine. So stop checking that. All right. So have any more tools, Alex?
Yeah, I have 2 more here. So this one
Yeah,
is... This one I found pretty interesting. Some of it goes over my head, but this one is basically a Python tool that generates malicious PDFs that you can use in order to test for vulnerabilities, maybe across sites or applications or that kind of thing that's able to open up PDFs. So basically, this thing is, I don't know what I would call it, kind of like a token or something where you're able to generate like different types of malicious PDFs, put it into whatever service or thing is opening these PDFs. And then you're able to get different hooks that allow you to see what sort of things are triggered via different vulnerabilities. So this can be used in combination with tools like Burp Collaborator. So that way you can actually analyze these vulnerabilities and enumerate for different kinds of things. I don't know if you used Burp Collaborator before, but...
Yeah, I have. It's mostly for like working with other pen testers and like other people that are examining like web applications. That sounds cool, but also like it could be backdoored very easily. So if you are a beginner, maybe be careful of this one, just because like, if they're adding one backdoor, why not add 2?
Yeah, this piqued my interest because for the episode that I'm doing this week on Hack 5, I'm featuring Canary tokens, which is like basically a service that lets you create simple honeypots, like honeypot tokens that you can send someone as like an embedded link, or maybe it's like a Microsoft Word document or something like that that's like bugged. So that way you're able to detect when somebody opens up this link or this document or that kind of thing. But this was pretty interesting, and I wanted to see if essentially I could do the same thing maybe in the future using Canary tokens as an easy alternative to detect for this kind of thing, like maybe embed one of those inside of one of these malicious PDFs and use that to detect for particular types of vulnerabilities.
All right, what's the next one? What's the final tool of this week?
This one is InteractSH. So this one is basically the tool that this malicious PDF generator can make callbacks to. This one I don't know a whole lot about, but it's basically a tool for detecting out-of-band interactions. So out-of-band vulnerabilities are, I think they're typically when attackers try to like exfiltrate stuff in, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but basically in a way that bypasses like outbound firewalls. So typically like regular firewalls are able to look for common types of attacks like exfiltrating data via HTTP requests or like that kind of thing. But out-of-band interactions will use other ways to obfuscate like data exfiltration.
Like DNS.
So things like DNS, yeah. So basically, this is just an open source tool that's able to enumerate and test for different types of out-of-band interactions. And there's also a plugin for Burp Suite and OWASP app that allows you to integrate with other tools like the malicious PDF thing that allows you to gain more insight to how some of these vulnerabilities can be taken advantage of. So I found that pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something you could cover in a future video, because I know you've been doing some stuff with like Burp Suite and OWASP, but I thought this one was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say be careful of those last 2, just because as a beginner, it's hard to ever know exactly what's in them. We always like to point out interesting tools that we maybe haven't tried yet, but could be the subject of a Hackbite episode in the near future. So just take them all with a grain of salt that we haven't explicitly tested them. They could contain, malicious code or, a backdoor or something. So if you're interested, check them out. But keep in mind, we have not tested them yet. So you are responsible for your own safety when it comes to trying out hacking tools. All right, so over on my screen, we have something that's actually been happening to me personally. I've been getting a lot of these SMS phishing attacks against just regular people via whatever cell phone number you have out there publicly. Is something that a lot of people have seen escalating the last couple months. And usually the way you can tell that this is happening is because these scammers will be posing as something extremely generic, like a package is being delivered to you by the US Postal Service. You must go here, to fill it out. And a lot of people I know are actually being tricked by this, especially like their parents are being tricked by this. So a lot of these extremely generic messages you might be receiving via SMS that are claiming to be something, very, very, could apply to anybody. They might be misspelled, they might have wrong information, or they might have just very, very limited information about you. This memo also kind of made me laugh because it was saying that you need to be very, on alert for this, but also to look out for like strange grammar or other sorts of misspelling. Is this, let's see, I don't know. How big a problem is this? I guess that's technically a correct sentence, but if I got that in a text message, I don't know, maybe I'm just being nitpicky. but they're telling you to look out for mysterious links, sales pitches, incomplete information, misspellings to avoid blocking/filtering tools, misleading information, unknown numbers. So if you get a text message from an unknown number and it's something kind of generic, like a really big business that pretty much everybody works with, like the postal service or something like that. Like these are all different ways that anybody who gets your phone number can try to phish you because, everybody gets packages. Like you really have to ask yourself whether or not this is something that applies to everybody. And if it is, then it's very likely that that could be a phishing attack and you should be super careful before opening it. I have personally unpeeled like 3 or 4 different phishing scams in the last couple of months that are all based on just messages I was sent via SMS. And some of them, I remember one of them, we ended up flooding with a B-movie script. But the rest of them, I don't have time to do that. So instead, I just ignore them because opening them could also be problematic if it's a more targeted attack. So just be very wary of this. I've seen it myself personally. Alex, have you gotten any messages like this?
Oh, yeah. I got a text the other day from Bank of America, which I don't have an account with. So I found that highly suspicious.
Yeah, I had one from Wells Fargo, who I also don't have an account with.
Nice.
So it was pretty funny to see that because they took a stab in the dark. They're like, seems like a Wells Fargo guy, and they were wrong. But if they've gotten it right, then I probably, I would go and check my official bank account and like call them and whatever myself. I wouldn't go through a link that they sent me, but the average person probably would. So that's why so many people keep falling for these attacks, because they're just really ramping up in how many are going out per day and how many people are being targeted by them. So be wary, make sure people around you are wary, because this is something that's increasingly becoming a problem and getting more and more sophisticated for reasons that we'll get into later in the stream. All right, so next up, Alex, have you ever found a computer that's in a public space that's supposed to be like a kiosk and then found that you could just, for no reason, get PowerShell on it?
Yeah, actually, yes, I have seen that, but also it was really funny because I was on the bus the other day and I saw the little tap-in card system actually crash, and it was running Windows 11 or Windows 10 or something, and it popped open like a PowerShell terminal. But yeah, it's actually quite weird how often Windows is used and deployed across things like that. It's not exactly lightweight, but also
yes. So I'm kind of amazed that this was not already a thing, because I assumed this was already a thing. But Windows 11 now has a kiosk mode that lets admins limit access to available apps and is specifically designed for public-facing environments. So because this has been used like this for such a long time, again, I kind of just assumed this was already a thing. But Alex and I have seen many examples whereby button mashing or opening a browser and then opening a file in a browser that you're not supposed to, or running. There's a lot of different ways you can open something from something else that you're not supposed to when the computer's not properly locked down. And frankly, I've been able to get to PowerShell on so many kiosk type devices that the fact that there's something out there that can make it more simple for the people trying to pop these up is a very good thing for their security, because frankly, it is incredibly easy to begin to run shell commands or open PowerShell scripts, or even pull down PowerShell scripts from the internet. It is Yeah, startlingly simple to do this when it comes to public computers. So this is apparently now a feature that was not in existence before. I did not know that, and it does explain a lot, though.
Nice.
So another interesting note this year, ransomware payments are falling because victims are choosing to pay less and less. And the tactics of ransomware operators are becoming arguably a little bit more desperate as they try the double exploitation attacks where they steal information before encrypting it and then demand money in order to not leak the data as well. So I kind of think that, like, it's funny because if you're threatening to not give back the data, but then you're also threatening to give the data to the public, then, like, at a certain point, like, you know, if everything goes badly and you follow through on all your threats, you get your backups back in a roundabout kind of fashion. But, you know, it's kind of being shown that the average ransomware payment is getting less and less, and increasingly companies are refusing to pay some of the more outrageous demands. So the trend has been amongst ransomware operators to start targeting smaller businesses that are still willing to pay these ransoms, but are still financially healthy. So they've stopped kind of going after the largest businesses, which have now developed a strategy for dealing with this sort of thing and made it less and less profitable for them, and are now instead going after medium-sized businesses that are growing and probably will still pay because it's worth it for them to continue their growth because they're kind of in a more critical stage, but are not as big of targets that have been hit in the past. So going to be interesting to see this, and also interesting to note that so much of this ransomware is now double exploitation, where they're trying to make money really however they can on this access to the data, both by uploading it and trying to, you know, extort people by threatening to leak it, and also by just, you know, ransomwaring it on the customer system.
Yeah, I found this one ironic because I don't have the piece pulled up, but I saw a piece earlier where a particular ransomware group was allowing the stolen credentials to be indexed and searched through a database. So I was like, if I was the victim of this attack, then I would just go through and recover my data by looking at all this publicly available stuff.
Or at least
that
most
seems
of it, right?
real smart. Yeah. Yeah, but then another thing is also you were mentioning smaller companies are being targeted. There's that's definitely becoming a thing. I also saw an article where, what was the group? Oh, there was a group called, I think, Magecart or something like that was making JavaScript skimmers for a while to basically skim credit card information from popular sites like Shopify or something like that. But basically, they started targeting smaller businesses that are using less ubiquitous payment forms, since those are generally easier to hack or that kind of thing. But there's definitely a shift towards targeting smaller businesses that don't really have infrastructure in place to deal with that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so another piece I found particularly interesting this week was I've been talking, so we put out a, I think, very underrated piece of content last week that was talking about why regular people might get hacked. I think I have it right here. And yes, we have, okay, so we went and we asked regular people, minus our friend Sean. He's the only, I promise, he's the only non-regular person we asked. But we asked a bunch of regular people why they thought hackers would want to break into their accounts, or what kind of thing a hacker would be interested in making money off of. And they were pretty surprised to find that one of the things that is really popular amongst hackers is being able to resell your bandwidth. So it was kind of funny to me that, by the way, check out this episode because it's great. It was kind of funny to me that this week we're also going to be talking about how SQL servers are being hijacked to basically do exactly what I mentioned. They're being hijacked to proxy all sorts of traffic, and it becomes a revenue source that has been making some people around $6,000 a month just by breaking into all of these systems and then providing them as a proxy service for other criminals. So this is great for the criminals who are renting the proxy services because they haven't been blacklisted and they belong to, as far as everyone knows, just innocent regular people. But as soon as they start doing all this sketchy, unauthorized bot stuff, then eventually they'll probably get blacklisted or shut down. But in the meantime, it provides criminals a way of being able to operate pretty much anonymously by paying criminals who specialize in breaking into these sorts of systems and then using their infrastructure to do whatever it is they're going to do anonymously. So there's a lot of different ways to hide on the internet, and one of them is basically using stolen bandwidth on computers to be able to move about the internet and make it incredibly difficult to trace who you are.
Sneaky.
Right? Yeah, I was really just like, it was so funny to me that this appeared literally the next week after we did, that we did a stream on this video. So yeah, if you were curious as to how big of a problem this is, it's still making headlines for criminals being able to make money off of taking advantage of everything from routers with bad access to SQL servers that allow them to route traffic and provide VPN services for other criminals.
That's also a hot new thing. Like, instead of like purchasing your own infrastructure, just finding ways to distribute it from vulnerable like servers or other people's routers that are taken over, sort of like turn into like either a botnet or a thing to redirect your traffic.
Yeah, or a hot new VPN service run
Right.
off of like, like smart refrigerators or something. So, all right, last piece I'll do before we switch over to you, Alex. We talked a little bit about how Microsoft Office was going to start blocking macros. So macros are super, super easy ways of building in scripting abilities to Office documents. And unfortunately, this has been enabled by default for a very long time, and it makes it really easy for attackers to trick less experienced users into running code, which can do all sorts of terrible things. And this has been an infection vector since like the beginning of time, it feels like. We keep coming back and covering this over and over because it works. It's very practical. And Microsoft, up until very recently, had done pretty much nothing to mitigate this threat. So finally, Microsoft Office is going to be disabling these by default. And research has shown that, well, I love this clip art, by the way. That's beautiful B-roll of what the virus itself looks like. But it is overwhelmingly shown that hackers have abandoned macros as a way of breaking into beginning users' systems. Instead, they're now focusing on ISO, zips, and RAR files in order to kind of bridge this gap. And it is much more difficult for users to accidentally click on or open these sorts of files. So in general, this has made it harder for hackers to accomplish their goals. Now, there were a couple of things that were interesting. This blocking of macros has instead driven an increase in link files being used. And this is something that is able to execute whatever code that the user is able to execute. So that's obviously pretty bad if you were to open this and it was going to open like a PowerShell script or something. And this has now become one of the tools of choice for hackers who previously were relying on macros in order to deliver their payloads. So obviously it is still a little bit more difficult to do this. And some attackers are also using HTML attachments for doing some other like .NET malware and stuff like that. It's just really interesting to see the ways that hackers are getting around, or rather just like reacting to this block on a very, very popular tool that's been a huge part of the way that threat actors have been attacking inexperienced users for a very long time. So it really is having an impact that Microsoft is choosing to lock down this feature and protect their users. And we're seeing hackers shift away from this tactic as it becomes less and less fruitful to use to attack people. So, I mean, it's kind of like I told you so. Like everyone has been telling Microsoft this since the beginning of time, that this is a huge problem and that hackers are just using this too much and that it's too easy. So having demonstrated this myself, I agree with them. And I'm glad to see this migration away from this very, very common tactic and hopefully start to see it sunsetted as a way of attacking beginning users.
Yeah, it was funny because for some time they were like flip-flopping. They like disabled macros at one point and then they re-enabled them because like users were having time macros through like the settings, or like people got really annoyed having to like continuously like go into the menu and like enable a particular macro multiple times a day. But I'm glad they're finally locking down on that again.
Yeah.
I actually have one piece of news here that does, I didn't really get to read too much into this one, but this one takes advantage, or rather uses one of those other like roundabouts that uses like one of those LNK files, which is basically a shortcut file in order to deliver malware. So this one is a piece of QBot phishing malware that uses a particular process from the Windows calculator.exe file in order to infect devices. But basically, the attack chain here is they send out a bunch of emails to random users. This downloads, or rather, it tries to open up an HTML file that asks them to download this very suspicious-looking zip file. And then subsequently, after you download this, it opens up, or rather, it shows something that's purportedly a PDF file that actually is secretly a link file that's masquerading as a PDF. That opens this up instead. And what this does is it swaps out, I forget what the type of attack is called, but basically this thing inserts a DLL, or dynamically linked library, earlier on in the can't find the attack chain. But basically what this does is it opens up the calculator.exe file, and then calc looks for a particular dependency or a DLL file, except the attacker is able to substitute one of their own DLL files that contains this malware in a directory that is searched for earlier on by Windows, which then allows them to execute this in a very roundabout fashion. So this is one example of using like a link file or something else other than that.
I think your camera might have gone rogue on us, but I still
I was struggling to. Can you see my screen though?
Yeah, can still see your screen.
Okay, that's weird. As long as you can see my screen, that's fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right,
so I have another. Yep.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. We can try to fix your camera after.
Okay. So I also have the other article that I was mentioning earlier regarding Magecart. So they had a variety of different tactics that they were using for scraping credentials and credit card information and that kind of stuff. But initially they started out.
Can you enlarge that a little bit? All I can read is I fix stuff.
A gross looking shirt. Very dirty.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Now you can still see the same shirt, but larger.
That's what I wanted. All right, go on.
Yeah, but anyways, their initial campaign was they were injecting like JavaScript credit card stealers in people's browsers that was targeting like particular WordPress plugins and that kind of thing. But then eventually they pivoted over to using PHP-based attacks, so stuff that happened on the back end and took advantage of vulnerabilities in the actual services and like web servers of, what was it? I think like WooCommerce and Magento and stuff like that. But now it seems that they're pivoting their attacks in order to single out small businesses, particularly small restaurants, that are using third-party services, since these are open to a whole bunch of vulnerabilities and they're much less ubiquitous than some of these larger platforms that they were targeting before. But in this particular instance, they were able to steal payment data from over 300 different restaurants, and they were able to obtain 50,000 payment records and also credit card info. So that was real scary.
All right, over on my screen, we have something that ties into the earlier wave of SMS phishing. It's really easy to get somebody's number nowadays, and if you wanted to target them, then you would need some sort of phishing platform in order to make it convincing for them to, put in their credentials and actually give you their information. So the average person might not have access to the web infrastructure knowledge to do this themselves, especially if all they have is the ability to text people and their phone numbers. So what does a poor criminal do? Well, it turns out there's actually a solution for that. There is a phishing as a service, which is being described as FAS platform named Robin Banks, which is pretty literal if you ask me. And this is offering services to anybody who doesn't have the technical infrastructure themselves to be able to phish users. So for just $50 a month, you can afford to run phishing campaigns against pretty much anyone, I guess. And if you want the deluxe version, which has all templates and 24/7 support, which I don't know who's supporting you, but I guess like a team of cyber criminals, that's $200 a month. So this is like the pricing of like an Adobe subscription, yet it allows you to get access to a pretty sophisticated criminal infrastructure that, yeah, at that point you just need to be able to contact someone with a good enough message, and the attack is pretty much automated. So that's exactly the approach that a lot of criminals are taking. They're using infrastructure like this to be able to phish people and get their information to sell in other places or to perpetuate some other scam. So the fact that this is now something that allows people who really don't know what they're doing to go and steal other people's information is really interesting. Also, I would note that, well, for one, that Alex's microphone is screaming, and for two, that while it says it's for robbing banks, it's really for robbing people who have bank accounts. It doesn't really seem like it's striking back at like the banks. It kind of more seems like it is just directly striking out at users who happen to have accounts at said banks. So the Robin Hood analogy, like, it's cute, but it doesn't really fly. You got to have something for branding though, and I guess I can't really criticize the business sense of cyber criminals. So in this case, I'm just going to give them a pass. So another thing we have going on is a very spooky story of hackers who sabotage radiation sensors in Spain. So I didn't know that Spain actually has several different nuclear power stations which need to be monitored by these automatic sensors that all communicate with each other. And at some point, 2 hackers with insider access, or at least very good knowledge of the system, were able to execute a simultaneous attack and take many of these nodes down. So it's unknown exactly why they wanted to take these nodes down, but obviously extremely suspicious and not a good thing to be able to have your country's nuclear leak detection network taken down by 2 hackers. So this is an interesting case we expect to see more information about as details emerge as to their motives and exactly why they were so dedicated to bringing down their country's nuclear detection system. So critical infrastructure is often something we talk about when it comes to vulnerable things that can be hacked. And this, I think, is probably one of the most recent examples of something very, very critical that was apparently vulnerable and actively attacked by people with some sort of agenda. So spooky to potentially have like nuclear leaks or something like not be detected. All right, so this is kind of a technical story, but it's kind of worth mentioning. Fedora has been ditching no rights reserved software over concerns about the way that some of these free and open source software programs have been licensing their stuff. So if you make open source software, then there is always the chance that somebody attempts to like patent it or otherwise like try to assume responsibility that they don't really have, and then use that thing that you've created to compete against you. And sometimes people get frustrated with that, and there's an alternative licensing that is kind of referred to as no rights reserved that prevents people from actually patenting this in the future. And as a result, it looks like Fedora has gotten rid of basically anything that's using this model to try to protect the software that they are contributing from people patenting it. So it's an interesting case that shows a little bit about the complexities of contributing open source code. I'm not going to go too much into this one because it really, you have to care about licensing to care about this particular story, but it is an interesting struggle that we, myself and Alex, have faced while attempting to put out educational open source software that then subsequently gets copied and sold against us for a profit by people who have the ability to do so. So this one I'm mostly mentioning because I have personal experience dealing with this struggle, but it was also something that I found interesting to be in the news. All right, more screaming from Alex's microphone, thank you. So this is a story that doesn't surprise me at all, and I think is funny that it is even a story. It has been found that hackers began scanning for vulnerabilities within 15 minutes of their disclosure, because this article concludes the vulnerabilities are disclosed on bulletin boards that hackers monitor, which are, of course, the official vulnerability disclosure forms. So the fact that hackers look at vulnerabilities that are being disclosed and then, scan for them is not news to me, but it was news to somebody because it's an article. So it is interesting to note how little time defenders often have between a vulnerability being announced to when hackers start actively scanning for or exploiting it. And in this case, it might shock some people, but again, it really, really does not shock me. I know that as soon as a vulnerability goes live, if somebody is subscribed to that, or if they get an alert or something and they know what things to type into Shodan, then they can immediately start scanning for things and be able to detect how many vulnerable computers are out there just about right away. So 15 minutes actually seems a little slow to me, but if this is what the study says, then I guess I believe them. All right, still slightly covering for Alex, who is back again. Hey,
is it better?
Your microphone's not screaming anymore.
Nice.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
I was about to try to see if any of our viewers wanted to rat out their North Korean based backed hacker friends in exchange for $10 million, but Michael's intrigued. But I'm not gonna. This is not a show to advocate for snitching on other hackers. So you can read this tweet at your own leisure, and we'll move on instead to an incredibly interesting and sophisticated phishing campaign that's going on LinkedIn. So the details of this campaign are that there is a group of people who are only targeting those who are responsible for like marketing or social media. And a lot of care is being directed into identifying individuals with open source intelligence who are specifically involved in managing Facebook ad accounts. So this campaign is specifically going after those credentials and uses a sophisticated .NET malware that is able to run on any computer, even if it doesn't have the .NET framework available. So the .NET runtime installed. So this .NET Core malware is interesting in that it is cross-platform. It is able to run on any computer and specifically is trying to get Facebook credentials so that it can begin interacting with Facebook and add the attacker to the Facebook ad account. So if a victim runs this, they will automatically and by accident use their access to their company's Facebook ad account to add the attacker and make it so that they have complete access to do whatever they want. So the fact that this is so targeted to a specific service and only goes after users on LinkedIn who have a reasonable shot of having permission to post on the social media platform that they are actually trying to get access to is kind of notable, because this is sophisticated cross-platform malware that really is targeted only towards getting access to this Facebook ad account platform. So interesting to see such a specific focus here, because it is really not a scattershot attack. It is only very specifically focused on a couple individual people. So kind of unusual and interesting to see.
I got to catch the tail end of that, and I don't know if this is the article I was thinking of, but I actually saw a piece earlier today that said LinkedIn is one of the most targeted platforms for phishing and like attacks and that kind of thing, which I found pretty surprising. I wouldn't have thought. But also it's pretty interesting to see that did you say that they're developing this malware in the .NET framework? Or is it just targeting .NET?
Yeah, no, it's .NET Core malware that contains all the required dependencies, allowing it to run on any computer, even those without the .NET runtime installed.
That's interesting.
Right? Yeah, so it's really interesting how rugged it's become to be able to target people running, a company ThinkPad or a company macOS computer, because it's going to be so evenly split. You really need to make sure that if you're going to go through the trouble of weeding out all these people that you don't want to attack, that it will have a reasonable chance of executing properly on the people that you manage to filter through. So interesting case of OSINT being a huge part of this campaign, because they're really not going after anybody who doesn't have a reasonable chance of having these sorts of cookies in their browser, which allow the infected file to do what it needs to do and give access to the Facebook ads account. So
yeah,
spooky.
.NET is quite ubiquitous, but I haven't seen like a lot of new stuff targeting it, so I found that interesting. But in other news, cross-platform attacks are pretty hot. We're seeing a lot of these being developed in languages like Go and also Rust. And I have two instances of that, if these pages hopefully load up. The first one here is a new type of ransomware that encrypts basically all types of operating systems. It works on Windows, Linux, and ESXi, which I haven't really heard of. Didn't get to look too much into this, but essentially it's using some sort of really crazy custom encryption scheme that's a combination of elliptical curve cryptography and also AES. So I thought that was pretty cool, but basically the driving thing behind this is that it works across multiple different platforms with very little modifications since it's written in Rust. And also due to some dependencies or something like that they built this with, it's particularly hard to discover this just right out of the box using antivirus. And then also, this one was pretty interesting. The source code for a Rust-based info stealer was just released publicly on a hacking forum. So this one's also cross-platform. I think it was designed particularly to target Windows devices. So what this one does is essentially it goes through a bunch of saved like secrets for browser extensions. And here you can see it targets specifically password manager add-ons. So it looks for files or stuff like that that might contain secrets like credentials or stuff like that for these various different services. But this one's also sort of cross-platform. It's written in Rust. Besides that, let's switch over here. So earlier you were actually talking about how people should be wary about some of these open source projects that I was talking about on like GitHub or that kind of thing, because they seem enticing. They have a legitimate use case that someone might want to use them for, but also this can sometimes be a trap where they install a backdoor or something in it and essentially just like trick the users that are trying to use the software. So in this case, a particular tool that was advertised for recovering passwords on programmable logic controllers that are used inside of industrial control systems actually contained a backdoor that installed a thing that allows them to basically install, whatchamacallit, I don't know, it eventually was traced down to be like a crypto stealer of some sort and allowed like all these different logic controllers to network with each other and act as like a distributed network for stealing cryptocurrency or that kind of thing. But I found
Alex,
that one pretty crazy.
That screen is 90% ads. It's just showing nothing. Was that an ad for Ask Jeeves? That's Oh no, okay, it was not. Okay. Sorry.
Oh, this one? No.
Yes, that one. That one was the one I thought was Ask Jeeves. All right, cool. So we're actually out of time for this particular stream. Started a little bit late today, but cross-platform attacks do seem to be something that seem to be expanding. So, all right. Well, thank you, Alex, for joining us today. Sorry about your technical issues. Yeah, is the capture card melting ice? Is it overheating?
No, I'm actually using the new cam link, but it seems like the camera crashed as well as my computer. So it's quite a thing. I'm also very sweaty.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody in the audience. It's good to see Zam, 8-Bit Oni, everybody else who's stuck with us through the stream today. Appreciate all of you, and we will see you next week on Wednesday. And also, if any of you are heading to DEF CON, you will also probably see us there as well. We're going to be at the booth a couple times, and then also guiding the Norwegian Institute of Journalism around the conference. So that will be really fun. All right. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Catch you guys later.